Bantam Doubleday Dell Audio Publishing presents The Grilling Season by Diane Mott Davidson. Getting revenge can kill you. If you want real revenge, you have to be willing to pay. Life is not like the movies, unfortunately. With these happy thoughts, I measured out fudge cake batter into cupcake liners and slid the pan into the oven. I set the timer and reminded myself for the 1,000th time that I'd let go of the need for revenge. I wasn't a hot-blooded teenager. I was a 33-year-old caterer with a business to run and work to do. 6:30 on a cool August morning, what I needed was coffee. You never let go of the thirst for revenge. Yeah, well, maybe hearing other people's sad stories sparked thoughts of my own, or in this case, I'd heard one unhappy story, one story needing justice. But what could I do for a client in emotional pain? I'd agreed to cater her hockey party. A nurse had told my client, Patricia McCracken, that hosting this sports celebration would distract her from her problems. But whenever we discussed the menu, Patricia didn't want to talk about victuals. She wanted to talk about vindication. And I was as unenthusiastic about jumping into her revenge fantasy as I was about washing dishes after a banquet. For 5 years, I'd run the only food service business in the small mountain town of Aspen Meadow, Colorado. My son Arch was 14 years old. Just over a year ago, I'd married for the second time. Add to this the fact that I'd already sought punishment for the scoundrel who'd recently wronged Patricia McCracken. I barely escaped with my life. I retrieved unsalted butter and extra thick whipping cream from my walk-in refrigerator, then reached up to the cabinet shelves for aromatic Mexican vanilla and confectioner's sugar. "Stay busy," I had advised Patricia. "It'll help. Make your guest list, plan your decorations. Some people despise slates of tasks and errands, but I revel in work. Work keeps my mind off weighty matters, usually. Take this morning, for example. After finishing the cupcakes, I needed to check my other bookings, make sure our sick boarder was sleeping peacefully, then rush to pick up Arch from an overnight party. Before zipping back to my commercial-sized kitchen in our small home, I was going to deliver Arch to the country club residence of his can't-be-bothered father. My ex-husband, OB-GYN Dr. John Richard Korman, was the father and scoundrel in question. He was the man my client, Patricia McCracken, obsessively hated. He was the man I had escaped from. He was known to his other ex-wife and me as the jerk. Small example of jerk behavior. Dr. John Richard Korman would no more pick up his son from an overnight than he would beat some eggs for breakfast. And careful of that word, beat. I stared at the menu on my computer screen and struggled to refocus on the task at hand. After much hesitation, Patricia had finally decided that her party would be a 2-month-late celebration of the Colorado Avalanche winning the Stanley Cup. She had ordered Mexican appetizers, grilled tuna from Florida — the Avs had beaten the Florida Panthers in the Cup finals — 3 kinds of salads, puck-shaped biscuits, and homemade potato rolls. Plus a dessert Patricia's husband had christened Stanley Cupcakes. I sighed. After dropping off Arch this morning, I still faced a truckload of food prep. Not only that, but this evening's event promised to be raucous. I mean, hockey fans? Now there are folks who take revenge seriously. I turned away from the computer, opened the kitchen window, and took a deep breath of summery mountain air. From the back of my brain came the echo of Patricia's furious voice. "I'm telling you, Goldie, I need to see someone punished." Perhaps I should have told Patricia, an old friend who until now had loved cooking, to prepare herself for a descent into the underworld. I took a bag of coffee beans from the freezer, then sliced a thick piece of homemade oatmeal bread and dropped it into the toaster. The interior wires glowed red. The delicious scent of hot toast filled the kitchen. Poor Patricia. After years of infertility and after adopting a son just before her first marriage had gone sour, she had remarried, endured a year of fertility drugs, and become pregnant. but she had lost the baby. Unexpectedly, horribly, avoidably, according to her. John Richard had been her obstetrician, and she blamed him for the baby's death. Now she wanted my help. I had been married to Dr. John Richard Korman, she reminded me. I'd suffered through an acrimonious divorce. How could she deal with her rage against him, she wanted to know. She was desperate for advice. How could she get through this? Whatever I'd said 2 weeks ago while booking the event hadn't been enough. Patricia, short and pear-shaped, with bitten-down nails and eyeliner applied with a shaky hand, had fumed like a pressure cooker. She'd shaken her mahogany with platinum hair and complained that I wasn't helping. She wanted revenge on the jerk, and she wanted it now. I took a bite of the crunchy toast and looked out my window at a dozen elk plodding through our neighbor's property. We live just off Main Street in Aspen Meadow, but the elk pay no attention to houses, fences, or any other sort of human presence as long as the humans don't carry guns. A dog barked, and the herd trundled off, leaping over a 3-foot-high fence as if it were nothing. I glanced back at my computer screen, but again couldn't rid myself of the image of Patricia McCracken tapping the fleshy nub of her index finger on her bone-white Corian counter. "Everyone hates him, Goldie," she declared. "John Richard Korman and that damn HMO that you have to belong to if you want him for your doctor. I can't believe we signed up. I can't believe I ever wanted John Richard as my doctor, but I'm telling you, he's going down." And so then I'd heard the whole story. Patricia had been diagnosed with placenta previa, a precarious condition that jeopardizes the stability of the unborn child. Total bed rest is usually recommended. Patricia had begged John Richard to prescribe a hospital stay. She'd been denied it. 7 months into the pregnancy, Patricia had hemorrhaged and the baby was asphyxiated. Devastated, she'd sued John Richard for malpractice and Astute Care, her HMO, otherwise known as ACHMO, for negligence. She said her lawyers were certain she would win, but Patricia, understandably, was depressed. She wanted more, and she didn't like the idea of waiting for vindication. She wanted, well, what, money? To drive John Richard out of his practice? To force him into a public confession? "Will he admit he made a mistake?" she demanded of me 2 weeks ago. "Will he apologize? Will he confess he ruined my life?" Next question. Naturally, I'd felt too sick to tell her the truth. I spread a thick layer of tart choke cherry jelly on what remained of the toast. As the menu was set, the contract signed, and the first installment check written, I tried to warm Patricia gently. John Richard Korman was the most powerful, best-known OB/GYN doctor in town. The jerk would not go down lightly. He never acknowledged making a mistake, and he'd certainly die before doing so publicly. Sheesh! A headache loomed. I really needed coffee. I greedily inhaled the luscious scent of Italian roast beans as they spilled between my fingers and into the grinder. Tap water gushed into the well of my espresso machine. I had thought I wouldn't talk to Patricia again until tonight, but she had called yesterday. The woman was so obsessed that she'd been frantic to share news. She'd informed me that John Richard wouldn't be engaging in a prolonged legal battle with her. It seemed the jerk was having severe financial problems. Now, I must confess, that news made my ears perk up. Had I heard right? Was this really happening? Could I watch the sun rise, sip some espresso, and rejoice in my ex-husband finally facing the music? The coffee grinder pulverized the beans with a satisfying growl. I didn't want to be premature. I couldn't imagine that there would finally be punishment for the man who had broken my left thumb in 3 places with a hammer. I reached for the coffee doser and touched my hand. The thumb still wouldn't bend properly, even now, 7 years after the orthopedic surgeon who'd said it insisted I'd be throwing pizza dough in no time. "He's got to pay," Patricia had insisted shrilly when she'd called.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?